call this February 4th City Council meeting to order, and that's
Mr. Green?
Here.
Mr. Lyda?
here.
Dr. Middlebrooks?
Here.
Mr. Murphy?
Here.
Mr. Posey?
Here.
Mr. Shaw?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Here. We'd ask the city clerk to handle the invocation, and Mr. Posey the pledge.
Let us pray. Lord, thank you for giving us such a beautiful weekend and a much-needed break from the cold weather. May we begin this week refreshed and ready to do your will. Bestow your wisdom and guidance on all here tonight, especially on the mayor and council and their service to the citizens of the city. In your name we pray. Amen.
Salute and pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everyone should have been afforded a copy of the minutes from January 2nd regular meeting and January 31st work session. If so, I'm open for a motion.
Move for approval of minutes without reading. Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed nay. The ayes have it. Now the reports section. First we have recognition of Hoover resident Aga P. Afghan, author, driver's license to kill. There you are. Come on down, sir. Mr. Mayor, is this something you should participate in?
Mr. President, Mr. Afghan is a safety professional, author of Driver's License to Kill, who wants to help teens, commuters, and young athletes from real-life tragedies due to auto accidents and other decisions. He uses a new and unique technique by adding short stories and case studies of other teens and athletes and their parents. He had input from his teenage kids, and this is a must-read for coaches, parents, and athletes. Famous college football coach Bobby Bowden has encouraged the author to write the book. Colonel W.M. Cobbage, Director of Alabama Department of Public Safety, expresses appreciation for Mr. Hopkins. He was an expert in public safety and a leader in the Alabama Police Force. Mr. Hopkins became fascinated by auto and other safety knowledge while teaching safety courses and being a safety director and risk management representative. He has a BS degree from Southern Illinois University, is a certified healthcare safety professional. He owns several businesses in inner cities and saw the life struggle of future athletes. His book has real and fictional stories based on his experience. Mr. Afghan is a proud United States Air Force Vietnam era veteran.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I surely appreciate it. As you can see, my name is A.P. Afghan. It's like a local name from Shelby County. About 40,000 people die on our highways every year, and about 4,000 of them are teenage kids. And when my teenage kids were coming home and somebody died in their school, I could see, how impressed they were. So I decided, with my background and all that, I decided that when I retire, this is the first thing I'm going to do is write a book about this subject. I wanted to use a new approach because we have a lot of books which are written on data. And so many people died, and when they died, and what happened, and then people hear the news on the television and they forget about it. So I thought, if I write it in a way that tells short stories of different teenagers and different athletes who die in these kind of accidents, so that will make a difference. Because if I put them in short stories and then teenage kids can read it, not just data, but the stories. So this is a new approach. So I use case studies and short stories. So I hope this will work. And my book is already available on Amazon. It says, and I used a scary name, Driver's License to Kill, so that it will get attention. this is all I have to say, and I surely appreciate for giving me this opportunity, Mr. Mayor and Mr. President. Thank you very much.
We appreciate your being here and making us aware about your book. Hopefully a number of us will acquire it, read it, and hand it to somebody else to do the same.
Thank you.
Mr. President, if I may, Mr. Hagan, is your book available anywhere locally?
Yes, sir. Barnes and Noble should have it, and if they don't, then you have to just ask them, and they might produce one.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir. We appreciate
Thank
your
you.
attendance. Next, we have a proclamation for Black History Month, and I'd like to recognize Councilman Derek Murphy.
If I can, may I have Major Tyrone Talbert and Man Major William Allen to accompany me, please. Good evening. This month is Black History Month that has been recognized since the 1920s to acknowledge the contribution of African Americans in American history. In the city of Hoover, we recognize all service members that served in Vietnam War, especially African American soldiers. Black soldiers faced two transformative issues in the 60s, and that was the Civil Rights Movement and also Vietnam War. Vietnam War has and continue to face criticism. However, we should not forget the many that laid their life down to serve their country. Here I have with me two great gentlemen who have served through this challenging time. These gentlemen are part of the American Legion post 9/11 located right here in Hoover. First, I have Major Tyrone Talbert, 26 years in the Army, served in Vietnam in 1967 to 68. On one tour in Vietnam, a Bronze Star medalist, navigated from E1 all the way to Major. Former member of the 87 MAC, which was located in Hoover, one of the largest command units in Hoover before navigating to Homewood, and also was the first press secretary to the first black mayor of Birmingham, Mayor Ayrton. Secondly, Commander Sergeant Major William Allen, which is a Hoover resident, served multiple tours of the Republic of Vietnam and an airborne infantryman with the 173rd Airborne Infantry Brigade Sky Soldiers and the 82nd Airborne Division. He also served with the airborne invasion of Grenada, Operation Urgent Fury, in 1983. The invasion in Panama, Operation Just Cause in 1989, Desert Shield and Desert Storm. CSM Allen was the Commander Sergeant Major for the 1st Battalion 503 Paratrooper Infantry during the Desert Storm and Desert Shield. Battalion 503 was the old 555 Paratrooper Infantry and the only all-black paratrooper infantry in the world. They became smoke jumpers in World War II and America's first responders in the wildfires in the United States of America. Lastly, I'll say he received 2 Bronze Stars and the Legion of Merit. Ladies and gentlemen, and if I can have, read the proclamation.
Whereas Black History Month celebrates the achievements and contributions of African Americans in the United States. And whereas the month of February was chosen as Black History Month because it marks the birthdays of 2 men who greatly influenced the history of African Americans, Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln. And whereas Black History Month offers a lesson to all of the contributions that African Americans yielded to the welfare of our communities, cities, states, nation, and the world. And whereas the city of Hoover also recognizes the sacrifice of African American service members' involvement in the Vietnam War, which ended in May 1975. And whereas the United States military became one of the first large institutions in the United States to desegregate during this era. And whereas African Americans bravely served their country but continue to face a tough racial climate and equitable treatment in Vietnam. And whereas after serving their country in Vietnam, African Americans came back to the United States to continue to face discrimination and war criticism from their fellow Americans. And whereas the struggles that African American Vietnam veterans endured paved the way for reform in the United States military and improved opportunities for future service members. Now therefore, the Hoover City Council and Mayor Frank DeBurcato honor and say welcome home to the Vietnam veterans and proclaim the month of February 2019 as Black History Month in the city of Hoover, and call upon the residents as well as others to observe and commemorate the many who have sacrificed for us all.
Mr. President, if I may, I think the gentleman would like to share a couple words, if possible.
Yes, sir. Sergeant Major, before you start, you jumped out with perfectly good hair.
I didn't have very much since then, just like now.
Thank you.
I'd like to say I've been thoroughly blessed. And I would like to say I'm representing the soldiers from November 8th, 1965, the first battle in Vietnam. Hill 65. If you look it up on the internet, just put in November 8th, 1965. It'll come up. All those soldiers that lost their lives and those that were wounded, my presence is for their memory. And some were from Alabama. One gentleman that saved my life was from Birmingham, Alabama. Thank you so much.
Mayor, Council, and especially Councilman Murphy, thank you so much for this opportunity. Councilman Murphy asked me to speak about Black history and about Vietnam and so forth, but enough has been said about that. I'd like to thank those of you for a grateful nation remembering. It was difficult, but it was late coming, but it came nevertheless. Thank you for your service. Many times it'll almost bring tears to your eyes because we didn't get that. So we thank you for appreciating us now at this time. I'd like to challenge those of you here and those of you watching online to join these service organizations. Not to just elect our officials and put them out there and not give them information, but to support them. And the only way we can support them is to stay informed about what's happening. We can help them make decisions. Only recently have they started giving stipends and pay to the spouses and caregivers, but it was because of people like you who realized that it's difficult taking a guy out of the bushes, putting him back in civilian life and telling him to act as if nothing ever happened. That transitional period, some of us are not strong enough to make it. So we're thankful that you are now starting to remember. And let us keep in mind as we send young men and women out in harm's way, that they're going to come back and we've got to work with them. We've got to get them employed. We've got to get them involved. One way I help self-therapy, I guess you could call it, is I'm so busy helping other folk, I don't have time to lick my own wounds. So that'll keep you busy, keep you involved. So as we think about ourselves as citizen soldiers, your mayor here, he was in the 87th MAC. This unit that was here in Hoover, I was here for about 18 years, where I went from an enlisted man on up to become an officer in the 87th MAC. It was a position for a 2-star general, 2 1-star generals, about 23 full bird colonels, and a host of us other little junior officers. That was an impact on this city that no one ever noticed it. But when it was time to wanna move it to Hoover or move it somewhere else, they all went to the Pentagon and rallied, get it back there. Now we're gonna rally to get your mayor as part of 9/11. That's the unit here in Hoover, the American Legion unit. I won't waste your time to tell you all the things that we do for youth, the things that we do for young people here in the state of Alabama, but we want to get you involved. There's several members here, and I'm so thankful that the mayor has a veterans committee to give you feedback on what's going on. So we just want to tell you, we've got applications in the back. We're going to leave them on the sign-in table back there for those of you who are veterans who have served in any wars. You can become members of the American Legion. There are other service organizations, Paralyzed Vietnam Veterans, Vietnam Veterans of America, and the DAV. Get involved, citizens. Don't just put these elected officials out here and leave them by themselves.
As Mr. Murphy works his way back, he has another duty. We have an appointment to the Industrial Development Board. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you. Gentlemen, you have before you an appointment to the IDB board. Mr. Foster Ware, would you stand, sir? You make your way down as well, too. Mr. Ware has a chemical engineering degree and also an MBA. Works at Alabama Power, really strong in economic development. And with that being said, I would like to recommend him to fill the IDB board position. Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any questions from the council? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Congratulations, sir, and thank you.
Thank you, Chair, Council, Mayor. Looking forward to rolling my sleeves and participating and getting to work on the board. Thank you.
All right, next in the report section, we have a financial update report from SFM for the Hoover Met Complex. This is the management company that the city hired a few years back.
Mayor, Council, this is the financial report for fiscal year 2017-18, starting October 1st, 2017, ending September 2018. Logistics. Okay, we'll go ahead and start our financial performance, local access use, and aspects going forward in 2019. First, our financial performance. Our gross income comparison, we beat the budget by $100,000, and 2,096. It spells out the basic categories, but in each category we overperformed. Blue being the budget, yellow being the actual numbers. So we exceeded value in our gross income. Expenses. So since the facility is not quite finished, or just about finished, our expenses were lower than projected, and we beat our budget by $53,910. And you can see where it breaks down operating facility and payroll on the side. So profit and loss comparison, we were ahead of budget $154,212. Of note, down on the total in the right-hand corner, we were expected to lose $113,812, and we went cash neutral to the effect of $40,400. That's, and Jason can allude to, in our industry, in the first full year, that's almost unheard of. So we feel like we're performing very well.
That's first full year without all of your facilities.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So we Finley Center for the entire year, and baseball, softball from August to the end of the year. Just started up the last phase. So this shows it graphically, a sample of month by month from 2017 to 2018. We took a snapshot here of June, July, August, September, October, November, December, and you can see how they overperformed from year to year significantly. 137% overall from year to year. This is a snapshot as well of key events that we had in 2017-18. What I wanted to bring to light on these, more than half of these events started out as a one-year term. They were going to try the facility and see what it was like. More than half of them now have multi-year contracts leading out into 2020 and 21. Economic impact, this is what we're most proud of, I think, is that we were forecasted to be at 11,892,000. We currently are end of the year with 16,645,000 of an economic impact, which has already exceeded the 2018-19 projection. And we only had a third of the facility open. Local usage. So we're a mixed environment, and this is an example of the type of attendance we had at some of our events. Trade shows, over 23,000 people. Basketball, 13,000 people. Baseball, softball, 14,000. School functions, over 2,200. Our open gym had over 5,000 participants. Walking tracks, 7,400, and it grows daily. HMC camp, last year was at 517, and we hope to make that significantly higher this year. Local sports use, Parks and Recs uses our facilities quite a bit. We have over 21,350 Parks and Rec participants in last year, and more this year. As well, down at the bottom, other sports usage, volleyball, and on and on. We have over 26,000 participants in those categories down below. Climbing and adventure. We didn't open this element up until October 31st, but I thought that it was interesting to show it. We've had over 700 climbers since October 31st, 9 birthday parties held in November, December, and we're 20 plus booked for the first quarter of 2019. So it's taken off quite well. We're very happy with it. Going forward, booking pace, marketing, and national tournaments. So the keynote here, these are some of the events that we have already booked for this year. And you'll see here, and what we wanted to bring to light is these are events with national recognition. Perfect Games event of the Junior National Showcase will have over 250 draft prospects for the 2020-2021 year. Their national high school event will have rosters of their only invitation only high schools. Their rosters will have the top 10 athletes going into next year's draft. As well, Adidas Gauntlet. That is one of only 4 open periods that the NCAA allows coaches to evaluate players, and we have one of those 4. So that's just a sample of what's to come in 2019, and our pace has far exceeded what we had in 2017. Marketing?
Yeah, I think the punchline here is that we're just getting started. The national marketing messaging is really taking off. We're attracting national groups, as John just mentioned, and we're working really hard this year to continue to promote Hoover as the destination nationally and certainly in the Southeast region as well. We're getting a lot of interest from the corporate headquarters in this way, and you're going to start to see Hoover's brand as a sports destination continue to make national news here. So I'm thrilled to be here. And while I've got the mic, Mr. Mayor, Mr. City Administrator and Council, your city staff's been phenomenal to work with, especially over the last 9 months. And the Hoover SFM team is thrilled to be collaborating with you all. We feel really good about the trajectory we're on.
Coming soon, the multi-purpose fields open Friday. So we started soccer and lacrosse on Friday. We have a full field usage tonight. As well, tennis started today. We have one high school that is practicing on our tennis courts, and we already have 2 tournaments booked and a variety of other membership packages and things that are starting to roll out this month. The splash pad and play
Sparks. Can you speak just a moment how the public might be involved on tennis play? Will there be a tennis pro and staff, or how might they work?
Yes, we brought on a young individual who is a certified tennis pro. We kept it in-house, so we would have the flexibility to start a grassroots program utilizing the community first, I think, versus farming it out to somebody completely third party. And we will have a variety of different packages. So we'll have household memberships, family memberships, Hoover resident discount, and we'll also have teams that can use it. And we'll bring in smaller type tournaments, mixed doubles on Sundays, that we can get the community involved in and the local neighborhood folks around the area to utilize it, and then expand it on into a bigger and better.
Thank you.
Questions?
Any questions from the council?
I got one more question, Mr. President. I see that the RV park is performing very well. I remember we had adjusted the pricing on that due to it not performing as wished. Did you contribute that success to the change in pricing?
Yes, pricing, and I think the way we market it now, the way we advertise it, we're averaging about 55 patrons a night. I think we got it in the dead of the winter, so that's a pretty good number.
Sparks, I would like to say that interaction that I've had with the public, your staff and yourself, show your managerial styles and your work effort to be nothing less than exemplary. You have really stepped up to fill the position that you have. Thank you, sir.
Mr. President, I would
Yes,
just
sir.
echo those statements as we've gotten into the meat of the advisory committee meetings and just seeing the responsiveness of the staff at SFM and how our city staff is working together. It's really, for lack of a better term, it's been fun to see. The intelligence that's applied to the decisions, the responsiveness. Anytime something's big and complicated comes online, there's hiccups, but seeing that all smooth out, and I think we're all hitting on all cylinders now, and that's been exciting to see it start to work for the people of Hoover.
Hey, thank you all. Before we get into the action items, I want to announce that at the end of tonight's action meeting, it is the intention of the council to go into executive session. At the end of this session, we will consider the meeting adjourned. We will not come back out for any other discussions or votes. So if you want to hang around and see what time we leave, that's okay. Otherwise, I invite you to go home and have supper with your family. Now to the consent agenda. Mr. Corley, I know we're going to have one request, but I guess we need to go ahead and read these off first.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. Resolution number 593319 authorizes the mayor to execute a task order agreement with Shelby County and G Squared LLC for professional mapping services. Resolution number 593419 amends the budget for fiscal year ending September 30th, 2019. Resolution number 593619 authorizes the mayor to execute an agreement regarding a hotel feasibility study. And there's an ABC application for Diamond Jubilee Market, Inc., doing business at Ross Bridge Grocery at 3601 Market Street, Suite 105, and also paying the bills.
Any requests from the council to remove anything from the consent agenda? Mr. Singer, you have a request. Come on down. Get your work out.
Item 6C.
Yes, sir. You'd like to have discussion?
Yes, please.
All right, so we will pull item C from the consent agenda, and it will go in place first in the regular agenda. All that being said, I'm open for a motion.
Mr. President, I move for approval of all items on the consent agenda with the exception of item C.
Second.
We have a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed nay. The ayes have it. That finishes our consent, and now we're going to move into our regular agenda, and we will start with resolution 593619. Corley has already read that, so I'm open for a motion prior to discussion.
President, I move for approval of resolution 593619.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions from the council? Mr. Singer?
Ronald Singer, 613 Riverhaven Place. In my opinion, this is 3 years too late. This is something we should have done before we started building the Finley Center. Hotels are part of convention centers, they're part of ballparks. There's a connection to them. They develop together. You go up to Toronto, Canada, you'll find the big apartment buildings all along the outfield area. You know, behind, outside the ballpark, but it provides a view. You will find in some of the facilities that are actually managed by SFM that there are hotels that are connected very directly to the convention center. Right now, looking at the aerial views, it would seem as though about the only place that could serve that would be the strip of land between right field of the Hoover Met and the Finley Center. But yet getting direct access to that becomes difficult because the climbing wall is where the great entrance would have been. Other concerns are we have an SEC contract that only has a couple of 3 more years to go. I think somebody looking to do a hotel in that vicinity is going to look for a longer commitment with regard to the SEC. There are also 2 hotels proposed over at Stadium Trace Village, and we haven't heard a thing about those. And then there's the possibility of the former Winn-Dixie site being home for a hotel. But the big thing is, in taking a look at the report, there were a number of activities, and I've been to more than a few at the Finley Center. But I do not see the kind of nonprofit fundraising galas that take place in the Hoover, Birmingham metropolitan area, taking place at the Finley Center. If we can't attract people from this area to come and use the great facility that we have, which can seat up to 2,400 people, if I remember correctly, are we spinning our wheels looking to do a hotel where we've got all these mitigating factors? So please consider those. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anything from the council? Mr. Mayor, any responses? None. We have a motion and a second. Any conversation? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Next, item 7 is resolution 593119. It is my intent to abstain from this particular item, and with that, I give the gavel to Pro Tem Mr. Green.
Thank you, Mr. President. Resolution 5931-19, Mr. Corley.
This resolution modifies the work week for overtime purposes for non-exempt police department employees and non-exempt detention officer employees under the Fair Labor Standards Act. This resolution provides that the work week for overtime purposes of non-exempt police officers shall be based on a 40-hour, 7-day pay period with overtime pay for any hours over 40 in a pay period. The work week for overtime purposes of non-exempt detention officers shall be based upon an 84-hour, 14-day pay period with overtime pay for any hours over 80 in a pay period.
Move for approval of resolution 593119. I would ask for a roll call vote.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments from the council?
I have one particular carry over from our last meeting regarding, how, as the mayor office discussed this with the police department.
Yes, sir, Mr. Murphy, we had communicated to the all-police email group a couple weeks ago with an explanation of what this resolution would do and how it would shore up the authority of the mayor to make this change. And I was able to visit a couple of roll calls over the weekend. Didn't, obviously not the entire police department, but a pretty good cross-section. Had great questions asked. I think we were able to have good discussion and get some answers. I don't propose to speak for those officers, but I can tell you that I think it was accepted that this would be a positive move.
Other questions or comments from the council?
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify something I asked you earlier today, this does not in any way cut the payout at the end of the week, which is what I asked you about. It would still be 40, but the overtime would start at 40 instead of 43, so there's going to be no cut in pay and no need to adjust a salary to make sure it's meeting the same this week now.
That's right. We're not changing the physical work week of the police officers. They work 40 hours a week now. They'll work 40 hours a week going forward. This is one very simple, isolated change. And it's as you stated, currently they have to work beyond 43 hours to achieve time and a half overtime. This would start time and a half after 40 hours, like all of our other 40-hour week employees in the city. And that's the sum total of this change.
Thanks, sir.
Other questions from the council? Hearing none, any questions or comments from the audience tonight?
Mr. President, may I ask a quick question? Mr. Corley, there was some discussion about possible litigation. Has that occurred, sir?
I think you're referring to a claim.
Yes, sir.
That's been filed, which is unrelated to this resolution.
That has happened.
Yes, there's been
Does that
discussion
affect-
regarding that.
Does that affect any discussion on the record?
From a legal perspective, I think that's unrelated to this resolution that's on the agenda.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Ms. Wright, please state your name and address.
David Wright, I'm a resident of Trussville, I work police operations on Warren Road. The comment that's just made about the issue with retirement and I'm not being related to claim that had previously been filed are directly related. I believe it was in August of last year when in this city council chambers, it was brought up on how our retirement benefits were basically being undermined by the actions of the mayor and Alan Rice and his policy changes on how they're, on the calculations they're using as far as our contributions to RSA.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes, sir.
Excuse me for interrupting you, I apologize, but we need tonight to stay on specifically on what this resolution deals with, and that's the overtime pay.
Yes, sir.
So please don't drift off that.
There will be litigation. In the last city council meeting, the mayor made the comment that short of an order from the court, that they would not change the policy as far as our retirement. I have to hand it to them. It's pretty good legal strategy on their part to try to put this forward in front of you, because if this gets passed, it's going to undermine a substantial part of our legal argument as far as trying to save our retirement. So if y'all allow this to pass, it's undermining at least 2/3 of what we're fighting. That's it in a nutshell. It's a phenomenal legal strategy on their part. It's coming across to y'all, to the public, like this is something they're trying to do as a benefit. The effect of it is it's going to undermine our retirement.
As I said, please, we only want to deal with the overtime pay tonight.
Yes,
That's all. We don't want to do anything else. It's not part of this, excuse me, this resolution.
Okay, I understand that, but I just want to make sure that you are aware that they are related. And I have given proposals to the mayor and Mr. Corley back on 14th of January on an alternative method to address this. And they said they would be back in contact with me, but obviously that's not going to happen. There are alternatives. At this point, the Police Benevolent Association has been contacted. And if you allow this to pass tonight, basically you're just going to undermine.
Mr. Wright, again, it's not,
Yes, sir.
it's not the time for that. Anything that you have to say on the overtime, we're willing to listen.
I would ask you not to vote on it tonight. If you abstain and allow other members to vote on this and it gets passed, it's going to have a substantial negative effect. Most senior officers in this department won't be able to have the
Anyone else from the audience have any comments or questions? Chief Thursday, since this resolution does affect your department, would you please come to the podium and share your thoughts with the council?
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I've talked to quite a few police officers about the 40-43. I personally believe that to be equitable, that our officers should be paid overtime after the 40-hour week. I heard Mr. Wright. I've not had many officers come to my door and talk about the negative effects. Majority of the officers that I've talked to were in favor of it. I'll go on record saying that.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Mr. President, I have a quick question.
Certainly.
Mr. Corley, it's been asserted that the mayor has the authority to do this on his own, does not need a resolution from the council. Is that an accurate representation of this action, that no council action is necessary?
It's a policy call for the council, we'll be happy to look at that in more detail, but in terms of this resolution is properly before the council.
Right, but does it take the council's approval of this resolution to change the overtime policy as your?
No, I do not think that it does.
Okay. So the mayor has this ability on his own. Thank you.
Mayor, Mr. Rice, do either of you have anything else you want to add tonight?
Just to respond further to Shaw, this issue was brought up about the pension several months ago. It was described as us doing something underhanded without letting anyone know, and when in fact this whole ordeal started over a police officer, not Sergeant Wright, coming to us saying that something was amiss with his paycheck. We merely went to the retirement system of Alabama, asked them to sort it out, and we are now, after many months of discussion with them, doing it correctly, and not the way we are doing it now. Not only is it correct, but does not jeopardize the officer's pension. And that is very, very important. And it also, the way we are doing it does not require us to basically lie in our reporting. And with that, all of that conversation that took place several months ago, I merely just came to this body asking you to affirm, stand behind our police officers being treated fairly and equitably like the rest of our 40-hour employees in the city, and that they get overtime after 40 hours instead of waiting 43 hours. We've worked on this many, many months. This was not something that in a meeting it was brought up. I was not aware of it. In a meeting with the police department, it was brought up, why are we not being paid after 40 hours we have to work 43. So it's something we were made aware of there. So it's nothing to undermine their retirement. Their paychecks will be more. They will be treated as every other employee that works 40 hours a year, and that's essentially what we were trying to do.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other comments? Hearing none. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Green?
Aye.
Mr. Leida?
Abstain.
Dr. Middlebrooks?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
Aye.
Mr. Posey?
Aye.
Mr. Shaw?
Abstain.
Resolution 5931-19 is approved.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Item 8, Resolution 593519, Mr. Corley.
This resolution authorizes Mayor Brocato to execute a collaborating employer agreement with Pareto Health of Alabama LLC and We Care TLC LLC for the establishment, administration, operation, and management of city employee health clinics.
Mr. President, I move for approval of resolution 593519.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions from the council?
Mr. President, I do have one. I understand there's a representative here from our consultant on that, Mr. Rice? Yes. Yeah, would you come down? I'll ask a question or two. I asked somebody tonight, but I don't think, if you'd go to the microphone, please, so everyone can hear you. If you don't mind, begin, I guess, with your name and title and who you're with.
Cooper Johnson, I'm the practice leader for employee benefits at SS.
Mr. Johnson, it's my understanding that Pareto Health is not owned by your organization, is that correct?
That's correct.
You would agree that your clients are not all created equal, no employer groups really exactly like the other. How, you would agree to that?
That's correct.
How often do y'all recommend someone besides this organization for your clients?
We look at every group individually.
Have you ever recommended anybody besides these folks to one of your clients?
We have 4 different clinic providers we work with.
Who are some of the others?
Central Health, Automobile, runs our parent company, SS Clinic. We work with St. Vincent's here locally. We work with Council Hospital and Innovation.
Is there any business relationship whatsoever between Pareto or We Care and your organization in terms of financial ties?
No.
Okay, that's all I have.
Any other questions from the council? See that anyone has signed up from the public. Sorry? On the, comments on the health clinic? Okay. Let's be in fine print. Come on. Don't go away, you may have some more.
Almost following up on Mr. Wiley's question. One of the things we try to pride ourselves in is supporting local business. A business that started here in Hoover, American Family Care, has over 200 locations throughout the country. When I took a look at American Family, they're open 7 days a week, 10 hours a day, or 70 hours a week total. The proposal is for 44 hours total, 8 hours a day, Monday through Friday, and Saturdays, 4 hours. I also noticed a minimum age for urgent care of 2 years and for primary care of 10 years. Now this puts some of our employees in a little bit of a situation. Now I realize that the whole idea is to save on the cost of going to emergency rooms and things of that nature. I'm sure this represents a savings, but it is not necessarily providing the total kind of service that we're looking for our employees. I think it's important to be at least looking at and comparing apples and apples as it would affect here. I'd like to know, has there been any analysis of what the equivalent or for the 70-hour service would be with American Family Care? By the way, one of the great things that I noticed with Pareto is that the drugs will be at net cost, and that is really a great feature. So, you know, I'm not opposed to everything, but I think it's important to see American Family Care at least looked at.
question, Mr. Rice? To Mr. Singer's comments about American Family Care, that's a phenomenal company. Probably most of us have availed ourselves of their services. We're very proud that they were founded here and that they're headquartered here in Hoover. But they do not sell the product that we are buying for our employees. This is not simply access to primary care clinics. If that were the intent, I'm quite sure American Family Care would have been very high on our list to approach. This is about clinic services where those clinics are exclusively contracted to employer groups. So American Family Care as a open access walk-in model is not what we're getting here. And I want to be, I'm not sure I understood the concern about the ages on primary care. I want to be abundantly clear, though. I think our employees know this through the Employee Advisory Committee. This is absolutely voluntary. This is not shifting all employee health care to this clinic model. So anybody who has an established relationship with any provider for themselves or their dependents can maintain that relationship, continue to use their city-paid benefits. This is a strictly voluntary way to access primary health care. I hope I've answered any concerns that might exist.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
I think I may be able to answer Mr. Singer's question as far as age is concerned. It is recommended that 10 years and older, they can transfer to this doctor as their family physician. It doesn't limit children 10 years and younger from going there as emergency services or so forth, but it wouldn't be their primary care doctor. Is that what you're asking?
They're two separations.
Yeah.
And it's further stated in the document.
Any other questions from the council? Hearing none, motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed nay. The ayes have it. Item number 9 is resolution 593719. Mr. Corley.
This resolution authorizes Mayor Brocato to execute an agreement with the Birmingham Children's Theater and the River Chase Galleria regarding a 4-show theater production to be held at the River Chase Galleria.
Mr. President, I move for approval of resolution 593719.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions from the council? I don't see anyone signed up to speak, but I know that there were people who came hoping to speak or just observing. Okay.
If you want me to, I can.
Okay. Well, does anyone from the council have any questions? This is came from the work from Mr. Posey and the Hoover Arts Council. And it would allow for 4 performances this summer of the Children's Theater to be held at the gallery. One of the things this does is help to provide a barometer on the patronage that the city would receive if and when a performing arts center was built. Granted, you wouldn't have the kind of shows that you would have at that facility, but I think it would give the city a good barometer to determine that. Suppose if you have anything like that.
Yes, sir. It also is a great thing for our community, a great thing to bring our community together and bring the arts into our community. Which is why we, when it was brought to us as an arts council by Brandon, who is the director of Birmingham Children's Theater, and will be the one writing the show that we'll have here at the Galleria, and by Mr. White from the Galleria, that we thought this would be a great way to bring everyone together, have something fun. We had a couple of events that we had to cancel, unfortunately, due to some circumstances, but this would be a great thing for arts, and like you said, a great thing to look at where we're going moving forward with arts. And we really appreciate both of you bringing this opportunity to us and partnering with us on it. Thank you a lot.
Any further questions, statements? We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed nay. The ayes have it. Item 10, we're going to start with a public hearing for the abatement of 2 inoperable vehicles on property located at 2244 Pine Lane. Mr. Wyatt, is this, you going to take care of this? And,
Yes, sir, the property owner, Ms. Callahan, was offered the opportunity to be here tonight and indicated she might join us, but we visited her this afternoon, said she would not be here, and she was working at the time to remove the vehicles, bring them into compliance.
yes, that the problem has not since been rectified.
It has not been rectified, and if she fails to perform, we will have her covered, as the ordinance allows.
I don't have anybody signed up, but is there anybody to speak to this issue, either for or against? This is a public hearing. Anything from the council? If not, Mr. Corley, resolution 593819.
This resolution affirms the determination of the authorized representative of the city related to the vehicle found on the property located at 2244 Pine Lane. The council finds that no further information, evidence, and/or additional investigation is needed concerning this matter, and that the abatement of the inoperable vehicles located at 2244 Pine Lane is hereby ordered and allowed by law.
Move for approval of resolution 593819.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Any comments or questions from the council? Again, anything from the audience? I don't know if everybody signed up. Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Item 11 is the second reading of ordinance 19-2419.
This ordinance modifies the municipal code of the city of Hoover, chapter 9, motor vehicles and traffic, to delete article 5, stopping, standing, and parking in its entirety, and replace it with the article as set forth in the ordinance.
Mr. President, I move for adoption of ordinance 19-2419.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions from the council?
President, I have one question.
Yes,
It come up about, I know we talked in the past about what specific cases is this addressing, as far as the width, and I think we went through that pretty thoroughly. Is it has come up about the cresting of the hill and the curves. Where does that come into play, and how is that different from what we're looking at now? Is there anything additional in there other than that you know? So this is all the same?
I see Mr. Westover with you.
All right.
So excited to be here. Good evening. I would say my recollection, and I'd have to look to be certain, but I believe that as far as parking restrictions along or adjacent to a crest or in a curve, I know it addresses a crest. I'm not sure about a horizontal curve.
And is any of that changed in this ordinance, or is it the same?
I don't believe so. I think it stayed the same.
Just, it states that it shall be unlawful to park vehicle on any roadway on a curve or hill crest which causes a public hazard.
Okay, which causes a public hazard. That's
By the
qualifying.
chief of police or designated.
And I apologize, I didn't get a chance to ask before the meeting. That's last minute, which y'all did good, thank you.
I know the police have a certain amount of problems with the roadway in front of the dog park over in the Blockhaven subdivision. People are choosing to park on the road rather than in the parking spots that are provided. Is this going to allow for the citation of those vehicles that park on the edge of the road?
That's my understanding. If in the determination of the designee it violates the law, they will issue those citations. Where'd our magistrate go? Oh, there you are. Are you happy with how it's worded and you feel it's enforceable?
Yes, sir.
The circumstance I've provided?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Anything else from the council?
Mr. President, and to be clear, the enforcement is complaint driven. Not necessarily.
No, sir, it's not.
So if an officer sees a dangerous situation,
They could act on it, yes, sir.
anything else? I don't see anybody signed up from the public. Is anybody wishing to speak to this issue? Seeing and hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Green?
Aye.
Mr. Minor?
Aye.
Dr. Middlebrooks?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy? Mr. Posey?
Aye.
Mr. Shaw?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye. Resolution for the ordinance is adopted. Item 12, second reading of ordinance 19-2420. Mr. Corley.
This ordinance annexes the property of Juan C. Portillo and Rose Valier located at 3269 Monte de Oro Drive, and the property of Susan W. Falls, executor of the estate of Charles W. Wilson, located at 3236 Pinehurst Drive, into the corporate limits of the city of Hoover.
Mr. President, I move for the adoption of ordinance number 19-2420.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions from the council? Seeing and hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Green?
Aye.
Mr. Minor?
Aye.
Dr. Middlebrooks?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
Aye.
Mr. Posey?
Aye.
Mr. Shaw?
Aye.
Aye. All right, now we come to the comments and questions portion of our agenda. All of our action items are now complete. Short of going into executive session, but that's not an action item, that's our listening session. First, any comments or questions from the council? Mr. Mayor, do you have anything to say? Very good. We've got a few people that have signed up to speak. I'm gonna call on the Hoover residents first. Lisa, and I can't make out the spelling of the last name. So if you please come down. Singer Ho. You related to Arnold? But you're not sitting with him. He's always so quiet.
I should have, I came
So
late.
quiet.
Lisa Singer, I live on Fairway View Lane in River Chase. I have had the pleasure of sitting with several of you in the last several weeks, and some of you who I have not sat with, some of my friends have. We met as part of an informal group that came about after the unfortunate shooting at the Galleria on Thanksgiving night. Some of us were very concerned about the racist rhetoric we were seeing online as a response to the shooting, the way it was handled, and then later the protests. And we were really concerned about the way things were being handled in some of our online communities that many of us get our Hoover news from. And we've discussed this with many of you. We like to see an open dialogue that the city can help us create to talk about the underlying racial issues that have been simmering below the surface and have started to bubble up in recent weeks. Things have quieted down a little bit. Maybe we're not seeing as many issues currently, but I think the things that we're seeing can't be unseen. And just because the events aren't as current or as close to the top of everyone's list as they might have been, that the issues have not gone away. So we'd like to look for opportunities to work with the city and work with our fellow citizens to talk about racial issues. It's particularly nice to think about doing this as we are honoring Black History Month, to recognize that maybe some of our citizens are not experiencing Hoover the way each of you are. That we talk about what a great, diverse city Hoover is, but diversity doesn't necessarily mean that there's not racism. And I think we need to address the racism and talk about how we can get past it. We need to talk about implicit bias that every single one of us has in the way we approach people and the way we understand things that are going on around us, and how we can overcome that to be a more unified community. So I just want to thank those of you who we've had a chance to meet with so far, and look forward to trying to move these issues forward.
Lisa, how many members have you met with of the council?
I missed a meeting or two. Some of my colleagues sat with the mayor and with Dr. Middlebrooks. I've met with Mr. Murphy, Mr. Green, Mr. Smith. I think that there's some other meetings in the works, so if we haven't gotten to you yet.
Yeah, and I would say meet with all of us and this. I know a lot of the people that run those groups. Let's meet with with all of us first and then see, kind of come up with a good way to do that.
Absolutely.
I don't know if you've had an opportunity or might have an opportunity to listen to one of the mayor's State of the City addresses. And in that talk, he does talk up about Hoover looking within and looking at other opportunities that Hoover as a city can do to become a better community all the way around. And
We'd like to see that, and we'd also like to note that regardless of what happens and what the outcome is of the investigation into the shooting, no way that turns out affects the need to go forward with these types of conversations. So I don't think there's any reason to put off these conversations to see what happens, because it's really, it's separate from the investigation and determining what happened that night. It's the reaction to it and how all of us have interacted.
thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Next, Shilpa. Is Shilpa here? Sorry, once again,
You got it right.
some of the letters are running into each other, so I'm not gonna try to disparage how your last name is stated.
Sorry. I put on my maiden name at work because everybody massacres it. My husband doesn't correct anybody. Shilpa Gagar. I live at 1384 Scout Trace. I'm here along with Lisa, along the same lines of what she was speaking about. But one of the things with it being Black History Month that I wanted to maybe read a little excerpt that I thought spoke very well to me when I was looking at Dr. King's letter from a Birmingham jail. And it's a section in the middle, and it starts here. I must make two honest confessions to you, my Christian and Jewish brothers. First, I must confess that over the past few years, I have been gravely disappointed with the white moderates. I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in his stride towards freedom is not the white citizens' counselor or the Ku Klux Klaner, but the white moderate who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice, who constantly says, I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I cannot agree with your methods of direct action, who paternalistically believes he can set the timetable for another man's freedom, who lives by a mythical concept of time, and who constantly advises the Negro to wait for a more convenient season. Shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. Lukewarm acceptance is much more bewildering than outright rejection. I had hoped that the white moderate would understand that law and order exist for the purpose of establishing justice, and that when they fail in this purpose, they become the dangerously structured dams that block the flow of social progress. I had hoped that the white moderate would understand that the present tension in the South is a necessary phase of the transition from an obnoxious negative peace in which the Negro passively accepted his unjust plight to a substantive and positive peace in which all men will respect the dignity and worth of human personality. Actually, we who engage in nonviolent direct action are not the creators of tension. We merely bring to the surface the hidden tension that is already alive. We bring it out in the open where it can be seen and dealt with, like a boil that can never be cured so long as it is covered up, but must be opened with all its ugliness to the natural medicines of air and light. Injustice must be exposed, with all the tensions its exposure creates, to the light of human conscience and the air of national opinion before it can be cured. We are not the America of the 60s. We are not the Birmingham of the 60s. We are a diverse city, probably one that people who lived in that time couldn't have imagined. My father wasn't allowed to immigrate until the mid-60s, when the law was passed. But I think that what Lisa spoke to is that diversity is not the antithesis to racism. It's not the opposite. It does allow us, though, an opportunity to overcome prejudice, racism, and all the inherent biases that we have. And I believe that our diversity is actually our strength if we approach it in the right way we listen to the diverse voices in our community and we learn from each other's experiences.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, Mr. Ivor Williams from Birmingham.
Good evening, Mr. President, Council, Mayor, and Hoover residents. First, I want to thank the two people who came before me, because it lets me know that there are Hoover residents who are not just expecting things to go away and just die without conversation. In mid-December, we had a very productive conversation with the mayor and with city administrator, at which time we discussed at least 10 things that as activists, particularly visitors to the city of Hoover, African American, some things that we hope that we could work with the city to improve things for residents and for visitors alike. I was very encouraged by that conversation, and I left it with one simple concern, and that was that there may be city council people who may be against, there may be residents who may be against, there may be other elected officials who may be against what we talked about. And since that time, I've been very disheartened in the fact that we haven't had any further conversation. We haven't had any conversation about particularly what would happen with the individuals who participated in the protests. Call it amnesty, call it a conversation. Nothing was done. Nothing was talked about. And so these people, young and old, black and white, will be in a Hoover Municipal Court on Wednesday. And we haven't talked about anything. And so while I'm here today, several things. For one, first and foremost, I would love to know who's for us and who's against us. I would love to know from this city council. I would love for somebody to step forward and say, Mayor, I'm with you. Administrator Rice, you can count on my support. Mr. President Smith, count me in those conversations. But right now, the way it appears, I'm not accusing, but the way it appears is that everyone is using the other to hide from these conversations. And I think it's very unfair.
Would you like for the mayor and Mr. Rice to respond?
I would, sir.
Thank you.
In particular, I'd like to know what was discussed in the meeting, and then also where the ideology would come without a conversation with us, that any of us would be against or for anything.
Well, let me speak first to a couple of the comments that the Hoover residents made about ongoing efforts going into the future. Sometimes the greatest danger in life is when we don't know what we don't know, and certainly every citizen of Hoover can't be expected to know all the conversations and meetings that take place here at City Hall. From very early on, following the event on November 22nd, we've been approached by a number of different individuals, constituencies, groups with national profile, ad hoc grassroots groups that form around this incident, as one of the ladies indicated. We tried to give audience to every single one of them. Obviously, in the early days, much of our energy was focused on the immediate event taking place and the fallout from that. But we did try to sit and listen to everybody who wanted to talk. That doesn't mean we agree with everything that we heard. It certainly doesn't mean we endorse everything we heard. But we did give audience. there have been efforts ongoing in the mayor's office and here in City Hall since very early on after November 22nd to think about now what. A lot of our media strategy was crafted around the idea that we're dealing with an officer-involved shooting, we're dealing with a majorly disruptive event in our community, we're dealing with protests. But when all that dust settles, now what? What kind of community do we want to have going forward? That's been a focus of ours from the very beginning. We've talked to many of you about our thoughts around that. So I want Hoover residents to understand, Hoover businesses to understand that those thoughts are present, those efforts are ongoing, those conversations are being held. There are more than one grassroots group that has formed in the city of Hoover, meeting in homes. One group's gotten so large that they don't fit in anybody's house anymore and they meet at a public facility. We've had dialogue with as many of those as we're aware of, and we plan to continue to work with them. We're not going to take them over. It's not we're not going to take something that originated out of the best intentions of people's hearts as a grassroots effort and make it a city, mayorally appointed blue ribbon panel or any of that. We're going to work with our citizens and allow them to be in the lead of where our community goes going forward. Now, I'm not sure. I've read and heard with curiosity and some consternation some of the things that have been said in the media about this one particular meeting that Mr. Williams references, and I'm not sure I was in the same meeting. And I'll tell you exactly why the mayor's office has had no further dialogue since that day that he referenced, because the next day, his organization came out and made a claim in the media that in that meeting, the mayor had offered clemency for anyone who had been arrested during the protest. And that is not true. There were no offers, there were no deals, there were no overtures from us. We did respectfully listen to the items that he had on his list. And we had a fairly long discussion about things that have been taking place in Hoover for 2 years relative to our hiring practices, relative to our efforts for minority and disadvantaged business inclusion, relative to the mayor's and the council's appointments to various boards and commissions, which have all been done in the background without press conferences, without any self-aggrandizement, to try to make sure that we reflect our constituency in this city. We didn't go behind closed doors and cut any deals with the protesters. We didn't make any promises of anything. We said we've been working for 2 years. This unfortunate tragedy occurred, and obviously that puts renewed emphasis behind our efforts, and now we have even more things to work on, and we'll continue to work on. But when within less than 24 hours there are claims made about that dialogue that simply are not true, we're out. We're out. We're not going to deal with people who are dealing in less than good faith. That's not how we're going to represent this city. So Mr. Williams is correct. There's been no further contact. There's been no further discussion from either the mayor or myself, save a couple of text messages since that time. And we don't intend for there to be. We're going to work with Hoover residents. We're going to work with Hoover business owners. We're not going to be bullied with a bullhorn. We're going to establish an ongoing, durable, lasting process in our city. But this starts at home. And quite frankly, we were willing to meet with everybody, but the idea that we would allow the agenda to be driven by people who have no investment in this community is pretty preposterous. And that's not what we're going to do. And that's not the recommendation we're going to bring to this body. So I hope I've answered your question, but I'll certainly stand for any additional questions.
I think it's...
Ma'am, would you like to leave?
I really would. I don't want to listen
Okay,
to another
officer,
word of that.
would you help this young lady out?
No, I'll leave. I don't want to listen to another word of that lie. He's a child. He advocates all our responsibilities.
This is the young lady who felt that constructive protest was stealing our Christmas ornaments and throwing them at cars on Highway 31, for which she was criminally charged.
I think it's bothering me that I'm sitting here talking to Councilman Lyda, and we haven't spoken to your groups, guys. And maybe that's where the disconnect is, that certain people up here would be against it. I certainly am not. Mr. Williams, I think we want the same thing. We want justice, correct?
Not only justice, sir, but yes, we do want justice.
Please come speak in the microphone. We are on YouTube, so everybody is watching.
Yes, we do want justice. And we are pretty much searching for the same thing. However, there was a promise made. It was a promise made of conversation. There was a promise made of continued dialogue. I think I made it very clear that there were conversations of those things. But the only commitment that was made was that, hey, this is a start, and let's continue. Now, I'm trying not to be defensive, but I'm somewhat offended because anybody that comes here in your city, be it a visitor, I have children that live in this city, I'm offended by I've had the best rapport with both of them. But to tell me I don't have a right, or to suggest I don't have a right to sit at the table, that's what's preposterous. So moving forward, what has or hasn't happened isn't as important as moving forward is having conversations with those people, having conversations with your own residents since you're too arrogant to talk to anybody else. All we're saying is that, there are a lot of us who would rather be doing other things as well. We're not trying to be destructive. We're not trying to be disruptive. All we're saying is that there needs to be a conversation about social justice, or there need to be conversations about social justice, or there needs to be thought processes around social justice and racial justice in everything you do. I'm not here. Until that comment, I considered them friends. I have nothing but a desire to work with anybody who wants to work with me. I don't care what labels have been thrown out there, what has been talked about. All I'm saying here is just like the young lady that spoke before us. Regardless of what happens with regards to this investigation and all of that, one of the things that we asked for was a summit, a diversity summit. There are a lot of things that we talked about that have nothing to do with me, nothing that have to do with anybody doing protests. It's about doing things right. And so with that being said, I stand ready to talk with the mayor, with the administrator, anybody who wants to talk. But with that being said, and especially with that attitude, I want you to know that we will resume protests. We will be resuming protests immediately. We will be legal. We have no desire to have a confrontational relationship with law enforcement here. And we look forward to having a conversation with the chief of police and whomever else would like to have that conversation so that we don't cross any lines. But I don't want to blindside you. Just like I said, we would stand down, and we did. We're about to stand up.
Thank you for your comments, sir.
Thank you.
Was that Ms. Lawson that left, or is she still?
No, Miss Lawson's right here.
All right, Ms. Lawson, come on down. Lawson's from Pleasant Grove.
I would just like to say that we have been peaceful for the most
Sorry, you need
part.
to speak in the microphone so everyone.
We have been peaceful for the most part, and there were conversations, he said there was nothing that was promised as far as clemency, but there were promised conversations. So I would like to see somebody of this place, please have some conversations with us so we can know what we can and cannot do here.
Thank you.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
so we be clear on it is a question when protests resume to verify what can and cannot happen to protect yourself, and was that the question?
Yes.
I was a little confused on.
The question is, when we're protesting, we protest with a certain understanding of what our rules are as far as where we can stand, if we can use bullhorns, all of these things. And those things change every time we're encountered by police. Like, one time you can do this, the next time you can't do that anymore. You know, one time you can do that. And these things aren't, you can imagine, you're talking about a group of somewhat intimidated, predominantly young people who are being confronted by officers who are, you know.
We're not gonna make this about our police.
I apologize. I have a deep respect for your officer.
Thank you.
Okay? I'm talking about the rules in which they're presented. I apologize if that comes across as though I'm attacking them.
Mr. Murphy,
So I'm just afraid we're just intimidated.
Yeah, so I guess in the event that anybody wants to protest in the city of Hoover, I guess what's the protocol? So, I guess that would be Chief Durs's police.
I think that'd probably be a conversation you can have with the mayor and police chief.
Police chief, okay.
Ms. DePrizio, was she the one that exited? She's still here?
Mr. President, I speak to Councilman Murphy's question real quick. All of our ordinances are posted online, correct? They can be found through our website. And I'm sure that you're certainly welcome to have a conversation with the chief and so forth. If I was going into another city or a city to engage in any kind of action that I may question about, I would do my own research into what their ordinances and laws state before proceeding. So we have those posted, available for you to read.
The law is changing when we're there. Like, the law, we do our research, and when we're there, the law, and even with the police officers, they have to have conversations between each other because they're not so sure what is right and what is wrong. So we're definitely to the laws. If you have two officers at the time of a protest telling us, one, yes, this is right, and this is wrong. We want a clear understanding.
All right. Now we are going to allow Mr. Carlos Chavez from Birmingham.
I've been hearing a bunch of malarkey. As simple as that. When you look at protests, all right, first off, Dr. Middlebrook, a city ordinance or a state law will never supersede what the Constitution of the United States of America says, all right? And I think that's where we have it wrong, because we do not, and I'm not sure if your officers just don't know what the Constitution says, but they try to make it seem as if a city ordinance supersedes what the Constitution says.
Mr. Chavez, this is not about our police.
This is, I have a freedom of speech, that's correct. See, now you are going against, you're telling me what I can and cannot speak for.
Yes, sir, I am.
You cannot do that, that's oppressive. That's oppressive. Listen, sir, I either have a right to speak or I don't. Do I have a right? I can criticize whomever I want to, sir. I can criticize whomever I want to. I'm speaking the truth. If you don't like it, that's your personal preference. And we will protest at Hoover Tactical as well. Excuse me, sir. I'm speaking. You've had your time to speak. I'm here speaking.
I get all the time I need.
Okay, well, we'll be here all day until you allow me the time to speak that I'm here live for.
If we were as provocative to you as you are being right
Go
now,
ahead, sir.
we'd be asked to leave.
Go ahead, sir.
As I was saying, it's kind of ironic how you all clap and stand up for Black History Month, but yet have no regard for Black people. When it comes around to it, we're out protesting. We are protected by the Constitution to have a right to freedom to assembly peacefully. That's what the Constitution allows us to do. And so every single time when you all come and try to limit our voices, do you not know, you guys up here clapping for Black History Month and quoting Dr. King? Well, guess what? Dr. King did the same thing we're doing today. That's what Dr. King did. But now you're saying, oh, we love Dr. King. We love Dr. King. How can you love and honor Dr. King, but yet look and frown upon what we have a freedom to do? We like to tell, oh, I have the right to bear arms. Okay, you have the right to bear arms, I have the right to free speech, and I have the right to assemble anywhere in America. Also, earlier today, you had officers, and particularly Mr. McDuffie, Officer McDuffie. He was one of the ones
Captain,
that stood in the door.
Chamber.
What am I being removed for? What am I being removed
I
for?
told you to keep it away from the
What
police
am I being
officers.
removed?
So-
I was referencing to an incident that happened
No.
today, sir.
No,
How
sir.
was this is not legal. It is not legal.
Please
This
remove
is
it from the chamber.
remove me from the chamber.
Council,
What?
please,
How is?
look, he cannot just sit up and tell
How
me
are
he
you all
can't
allow
call
this
my name.
to do this? This is
insane.
right.
This is not a discussion about our police officers nor our police
He
department.
was talking about, he specifically quoted a person. He was not attacking the man, he
And I
quoted a
requested
person.
a number of times for that to
He quoted someone.
I'm still speaking. Okay, so there was an officer. If I can't say the name, there were officers who stood in the doorway, not allowing me to come into a public building as if this was 1960s when Mr. George Wallace stood in the doors of University of Alabama. That's the same thing you're doing right now, Mr. Smith, by not allowing me to speak freely as I have a right to do and trying to oppress what I say just because you yourself don't like what I'm saying. That's what's wrong with the city of Hoover. That's why Hoover will always be racist, as it was founded by William L. Hoover with racist intent. Hoover will always be racist because you have people like Mr. Gene Smith that tries to limit voices when we're simply trying to tell the truth about what's going on in this city. And for Mr. Rice to suggest that we don't have dealings here, I lived in Hoover for a very long time, Mr. Rice. Matter of fact, my past previous address is in Hoover. But guess what? Because of the way this city is, I don't want to live in this city. Okay? So I was a resident of the city of Hoover. I have brothers that attend schools in Hoover. I have parents that live in the city of Hoover. I have not been to my mother's home since November. Why? Because of the way that the city of Hoover is doing. This is America. This is America. Robert's Rules of Order does not supersede
Mr.
the
Chambers,
Constitution.
under Robert's rules, you are to address the council.
Does Robert's Rule supersede the Constitution of the United States of America? Can you please address that? Does the Robert's Rules of Order?
That was
It's a yes or no
recognized
answer.
by this council.
It's a yes or no. Does
Prior
Robert's
to
Rules of
it
Order
is-
supersede the Constitution?
Officers, please.
Okay. Because you know what I'm saying. All y'all racist. Every single last one of them. Racist white folks. That's all y'all do is want to be
Mr.
racist.
Corley, you have a recommendation to go into executive session.
Yes, sir. First, we need a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing pending real estate litigation.
So moved. Second. Have a motion and a second.
Okay, I've certified that it is permissible under Alabama law for this body to enter into executive session to discuss the legal ramifications of and legal options for certain pending and or threatened real estate litigation against the city of Hoover, and that the litigation exception under the Alabama Open Meetings Act applies to this situation.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We've been advised by legal counsel. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We will adjourn to the council conference.